Hello, this is the FCI Podcast. I'm Attila, Márton. I assume I do not need to introduce my guest today to those who are interested in the scientific aspect of dog behavior. He was one of the members of the team of scientists who conducted the very first scientifically approved experiment on dog behavior back at the end of the 90s. Now he is the head of the internationally acclaimed Ethology Department at the ELTE University in Budapest, Hungary. Please welcome Ádám Miklósi. And the topic I would like to discuss with you is dog behavior itself. Dogs are undoubtedly the most diverse species, not just in conformation, but also in behavior. They can complete numerous and utterly different functions due to their various skills and abilities. And I would also add one thing: anthropomorphism is really common, especially now as we keep dogs as families. So I think it is important to understand basic terms and concepts related to dogs properly. We similarly use many terms which are absolutely general in the case of humans: personality, skills, emotions, instincts, temperaments, etc. Can we talk about the same in the case of dogs? And let's start with a fundamental term: personality. Can we talk about personality in dogs, and how can we describe it? Is it a different term compared to human personality?
Okay, so Attila, thank you very much for inviting me, and this is a very interesting question, and I can understand why people have different views on this. But I mean, science, and especially at ethology or animal behavior. So this is the science that is studying animal behaviors independently from the species. So you can study elephants and dolphins and dogs and earthworms, whatever. So in animal behavior, in the last 20 years, personality became an accepted concept. This concept actually talks about stable variability within individuals of a specific species. And personality is defined as being the stable aspect of the behavior that is revealed independently from the space and the time of the individual. So basically, these are those factors of the behavior that remain constant over a relatively long time. Usually we speak of personality of adults because that's where you expect that actually the behavior is stable. So personality is a concept. It only is in our head, in our thinking. What we are talking about, and what could be more interesting in case of dogs, humans, and many animals, is the personality trait. So what aspects of the personality are there that you can reveal? So for example, friendliness, being kind to other members of your own species, or in the case of dogs, being kind towards humans. This is or could be an aspect of personality. And just as dogs are generally kind towards people, people are also generally kind to other people. So it means that friendliness could be a personality trait that is the same or very similar in humans and dogs.
Can you give me some examples? Because I know that there are probably different personality models in science that you use for different experiments. What kind of traits you measure? What are those traits which are important, contributing to the personality or the behavior of the dog?
So there are usually two approaches. One is the approach that people think about. I mean, this is a theoretical approach. They think about, okay, let's say maybe there is something general, how animals behave when something dangerous is coming about, okay? So this is the concept of fearfulness. And then you can investigate whether fearfulness is a personality trait in dogs or other animals, and you can design specific tests to actually look at it. So you can have to test many animals, many dogs, for example, in different situations. And then if you find that individuals react always fearful or always not fearful to a specific situation and in different times over their life, then you can come to the conclusion that yes, this personality, this trait, this fearfulness is a trait that could be part of the personality of dogs in general. For example, person actually has turned out, but it is well known for hundreds of years that fearfulness is a personality trait in humans and dogs. And so you can prove that in experiments. The other approach, the reverse approach, is that let's say you don't have any idea about personality. You put the dog in different situations, and you then look at the behavior and look for some aspects that is sort of stable. So, and in this way, you can also look, for example, at playfulness, which is also it seems to be also a personality trait. So how much a dog is playing generally with the owners, with the friends, with other dogs. This might be a trait, a specific character of this individual dog, and it's again stable over life. So either there are some dogs who are very, very playful, other dogs are medium playful, and probably there are also some dogs who don't really like to play at all. And this is just like what you have also in humans. You have humans who like to play a lot and some others who don't, they don't.
Okay. I don't want to, just one thing came back into my mind from a previous podcast where we were talking about context and the situation. And I'm good you mentioned this. I don't want to go deeper into behavioral problems, but when we are evaluating these things, it is really important, if I'm right, to assess the situation, the context. Because, for example, when we talk about aggressiveness in dogs, it depends if the situation triggered something, or the dog has some other issues which cause that kind of behavior. Am I right in that?
Well, I mean, in the case of the behavior, but in all biological character or all biological features, there are always two components. So one is the environmental component, and one is the inherited, the genetic component. So it's either about fear, or you mentioned aggression, which is also, or some aspect of aggression is also a personality trait. Obviously, it influenced by the genetics of the individual dog, also by the genetics of the breed or of that population. So in case of feral dogs, they might be also selected for some level of aggression, but you always have also the individual variation. That means that individuals are different even within a breed. And that's why it's a problem, because a lot of descriptions of the breeds actually also mention that this is a very friendly breed, or this is a very, well, they don't really say aggressive breed, but they say things like very territorial. And this means that this might be the case in many dogs, but not all of them, because there's this variability. So, and again, the dogs need some experience and in order to develop a trait as an adult, and they might get this experience or they might not get it. So and this is why this is actually very exciting, because people are like to think in stereotypes. So when they look at the breed, they see the nice pictures of a dog, how a border collie looks like. And actually most border collie look like very much the same, little changes in the pattern and so on. But the behavior is more variable, because there you have to realize that there's a very strong selection for the shape of a dog, but not for the behavior.
Oh, it is a huge topic, and so many things came into my mind. I want to talk about with you. And you mentioned breeds, stereotypes, and this is one thing I wanted to talk about later, but let's talk about it now. How much can you predict the behavior? Let's just, with behavior, I mean temperament, the traits of certain breeds. You mentioned that, okay, each dogs are individual, even within a litter. That's why, for example, when trainers of helping dogs for a blind go visit the litters to pick up, let's just, probably they won't pick up a puppy, but to check if there is an individual dog, which is good. How much can we predict the breed specific behavior, if behavior is a good word in this? I know it is a really complex topic, but
well, it's difficult to say to what extent. It very much depends on the actual situation. So there is this word which means heritability, which means that what percentage of the genetic information is transmitted basically from one generation to the next. But obviously it depends on the selection that is going on. So if you have a very specifically selected trait, let's say you have hunting dogs who have to retrieve, and this behavior is always selected for. So those dogs who are not retrieving for any reason, they are taken out from the breeding population, then you are quite likely that your dog, your puppy, will actually show the same pattern as the parents. But in the present situation, this is not anymore the case, because we have even within breeds, different populations. So we have a sport population, we have a show population, we might have a population that is just bred for being a companion dog. So those traits are actually not selected for, especially not in the family dog breeding. So you can expect that, well, the dog might retrieve or might not. The good news is, for example, and this is also makes it complicated, that dogs are very trainable, which means that even if you have let's say a retriever who is not so keen on retrieving, if you start very early retrieving exercise, then you can enhance it. The dog might not get a professional retriever, but it could actually improve a lot. And that's actually makes it even more complicated to find out, what is inherited and what is learned.
Yeah, and probably I will make it a bit more complicated, because there is always a debate. Not, I wouldn't say always, but it is a common debate among breeders whether a dog needs to complete that kind of function, for example, herding, to express the behavior itself, or you need to practice, or the dog will complete this task automatically. Because in many breeds they can't really express that function, because we don't use dogs in that function anymore. And breeders are afraid that okay, we have a lot of dogs selected for family life, and this breed is not that breed because can't complete that behavior, that function anymore.
I mean, I agree. And so the thing is really complicated. So first of all, probably some breeds are not really suitable for family life. They are just too big, for example. So those breeds are really now getting out of fashion, if it could be said, or they just are, bred for very specific purposes, for protecting houses in the country, but they are not in big numbers. And this is a problem for the breeding at all, because if the population gets too small, then other problems might emerge. And other breeds are obviously more lucky. They are more suitable for family life. Now, again, this is an issue that I think the breeders should really look at the way how people want to interact with the dogs, and maybe select for specific traits. So, for example, if you have a sheepdog that actually genetically is bred and selected for being interactive with the person. So sheepdogs are should be interested in the humans. This is what they sort of are bred for partly. Now, obviously, a sheepdog also has to be very agile, because to herd in the sheep, you have to run fast and react rapidly and so on. Now, the first character is good. The second is not so good, because if you want to have a calm family life with a dog, then it's actually not so good to having a very agile shepherd dog. So what the breeders could do is selecting for calmer dogs for family life. And then they would actually supply dogs who are better suited to live in a small flat, to having small excursions. But on the other hand, we should also see that the owner should not see the dog as, if you buy it like a car and it's already ready to drive. So you have to actually interact with the dog, and not just for the first few weeks, but for all the life and so on. So this is also another thing, that is, the dogs actually should get some input. They should get some activity. We should realize that we are controlling them a lot in how we arrange their life. So we also should give them the possibility to live a life, and not just being like lying on the floor and doing nothing. That's not a dog life.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I would add the other aspect of the story, from the aspect of families keeping dogs. because I think stereotypes, again, is a huge problem in many cases, and it triggers further animal welfare problems. And there is a tendency that there are certain breeds now which are known as clever dogs. And of course, no one wants to have a stupid dog. And when people get these breeds, for example, and if I'm right, it is a problem in many countries now. For example, a border collie. A border collie is said to be a really, really clever dog. And I would say the dog has the potential to be clever. And the family takes the dog home and gets shocked when they realize that, oh, this dog is not clever. It has no idea what to do, because I want this dog to understand words. I want this dog to immediately understand what I want. So I think it is essential to understand that genetics and environment, and you need to interact with your dog. And it is an ongoing process, because I've heard questions in Hungary, for example, from people attending dog schools, that how long does it take to teach my dog to be clever? And I think this is not the case, how to properly keep a family dog.
Yes, I think the cleverness is not a very healthy or good concept. So actually, also the breeds all of them are sort of clever, but in specific ways. It's just the same like with people. So again, I mean, this parallel is easy to understand, that there are people who are very good in cooking, other people are good in running, and other people are good in mathematics, and all of them are clever, but usually in a very specific part. So this is actually the owner's responsibility. Trainers might give some ideas, obviously, the breeders might give some ideas, but it's the owner's responsibility to figure out, what is my dog good really? So, and then they should really support that ability. So, and all dogs are good in something. It just is the people have to pay some attention and figure it out.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have extraordinary expectations, because I think sometimes this is the problem, that I have an idea about the ideal dog for myself. I go to the shelter, I find a breeder, I buy a puppy on Facebook, and then I realize that, oh, this dog is not exactly the same as I had in my fantasies. And I read really, really terrible stories of people taking puppies or dogs back to shelters because this dog was not that playful. This dog was a bit depressed. And it is something that I think people should really sort out in their own mind, in their own expectations, and they need to take the time and effort to teach the dog and to interact with the dog, as you said. Yes. And if we talked about personality, we talked about traits. What about the term we usually use, skills, when we talk about the skills of the dog? How can you describe skills in dogs? What it exactly means? Because sometimes I think it is a vague concept in the head of many people, and I couldn't describe it properly myself as well.
I mean, I must say that when we say skills, is probably something that is related to problem-solving behavior. So actually, looking at so a lot of people also in ethology, it's very popular to talk about cognition. So how the mind is working, basically. And this is very different from how the brain is working. You know, mind is sort of a concept that we have. Again, this is like personality. Nobody has seen a mind. Yeah. So, but anyway, we assume that there is something in our head that is calculating, processing, and solving problems. So this is my view on this, that, okay, if the ball is under the table, just, and then how you get it out. And there are several ways to actually get it out. One is to try to go around, below the table and use your paw, or try to even use your tongue and maybe somehow to push over the ball out. There's another way actually to look at the person that is usually in the room, and then look at the ball, and then you can hope that maybe the person will help you to get out the ball from the table. So these are the problem-solving issues, and also if there's a fence, how you get through the fence. If you want to let's just run away from the garden, or so or if the dog is observing another dog, and then how to get the dog into play, how I solve the problem that I want to play, the other dog might want or might not want. So how may I convince the dog that he should play with me? So what is his problems, and the way how they are solved, and obviously when they are solving a problem, they are also practicing it. So it's like, if you are successful, or even if you are unsuccessful, if you are a clever individual, you learn from that. You learn from your solutions, but you learn also from your mistakes, and by that you can develop your own skill. Obviously, the owners in the case of dogs have a huge role on this, because if you don't provide the dog with the possibility to experience, the possibility to face problems, then the dogs will never develop any skill. And this is what you also often see, that dogs who are not exposed to any challenge, their life is just, nothing, just feeding and sleeping, those dogs have no skills at all, because they were not really supported to actually develop those skills. But in addition, I must also say that obviously breeds have been selected for specific skills to make easier for the owners to develop that skill. So that's why actually, when you have I mentioned this example with the retriever. So all dogs can actually retrieve objects, because this is very much part of general dog behavior. But some breeds were selected specially for this trait, if you like, this skill. But if you never practice it, then they might get lost or not use very much. But you can, by additional training or additional experience, you can really enhance this skill. And this is what many years ago people needed. Hunters and shepherds and policemen, whatever they needed. They don't want it. This is what the problem is, that they don't want it to train the dogs forever. But they wanted a genetically well-prepared dogs that could be adjusted to the typical situation. And this is what has changed today, because basically we don't anymore need those very specific dogs. We need family dogs. I mean, most people need family dogs who are just easy to live with. But again, it's, as you mentioned before, it's not just I just do nothing. We have to train them, educate them, give them experience, all the pedagogy that is taught in schools, or everybody has experience when they were younger, or what you do with your children. You take them to the zoo, you take them outside, you take them to the walk, you play with them football. This is what you should do with the dog, and then it works usually.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about if we miss this, all the effects on dog welfare and behavioral problems, and it is not good for the dog, especially if it was selected for thousands of years for certain skills, and it can't really express it. And yes, I think it's another big and huge topic. What sort of behaviors and skills and traits are necessary for certain different functions, because it matters if the dog needs to cooperate with other dogs, like the sledge dogs, or the dog needs to act on itself, or the dog needs to decide on his own. For example, a guarding dog, it shouldn't stay there waiting for your order to attack the wolf or the bear or protect you. It acts automatically on its own. It makes its own decisions. And in other cases, the dog really waits for an approval or an order from the human. So I think that's why dogs are so fantastic. And that's why they can complete so many different tasks in the human environment, and not just now, but we are really talking about thousands of years. And there is another human term I would like to ask you about, because recently I participated in an online webinar, and the speaker mentioned that ecologists do not really like the word instinct, and instinct is something which is commonly used in many contexts when we are talking about dog. Why don't you like? Is it true that you don't like the word instinct when we are talking about dogs?
it's not about whether I like a word or I don't like a word, but it's more whether in science you're using word with some reason. So it's a historical assumption, let's put it this way, that this word come about because obviously we are, on the other hand, we need some words to make sentences. So, however, at some point where you have the means to do research and also to basically reflect what you are saying, then actually it might turn out that some words get totally useless or have no meaning. So in modern ethology or modern animal behavior, really, when you are looking at how the mind is functioning, we don't really find a place for this instinct. So, because if you say, okay, instinct, you obviously would say, now what kind of instincts you are talking about? Because again, instinct is a concept. So the idea is that there is somehow something in the brain that makes you do something, okay, basically, which is sort of, and you also assume this is sort of a genetic. So something very, now, since we have genetics now, and we know that there are the genes that are producing some proteins and many other stuff. So we have a system that probably, we don't understand it very well, but we get closer. And we see the components of the system, the genes in the genome, the proteins, the neurons, the connections, and so on. And what we don't see is anything that would make these where the instinct is. So there's nothing like instinct. What you see is a mechanism that has many components, and this actually will result in some sort of specific behavior of the dog. So basically, and this is the one. And the second is really the thinking that, okay, but what kind of specific instincts you have or you might have, and that's another issue because you can think about having, okay, hunger or aggression. But if you go down, you will end up with millions of instincts. And that makes, again, no sense. So I think it's just that people should try, to talk about without this word. And it actually is working. So it's not impossible because you put this word into sentences and it doesn't add anything. So if you say a dog, okay, this, yes, the dog is chasing the bicycle, okay? And then you would say, okay, this is doing it because it has a hunting instinct. Did you explain anything? No. Probably what happens is that those dogs were selected for enhanced chasing skill, and that's it. So you don't need the instinct part of the sentence at all. It's much easier to talk in terms of behavior and also in terms of the stimuli that make those behaviors active and or release these behaviors. And actually even the classical concept of ethology was about of species-specific behaviors and sign stimuli that evoke these behaviors.
Thank you for the explanation. What really got into my mind that if we use instinct, the word, it completely oversimplifies a very, very complex model of behavior, what exists in the dog. Because I try to rewind where I hear recently the word instinct related to dogs. And for example, killer instinct of the dogs because they want to kill. But come on, as we mentioned before today, aggression is a very complex behavior. It is not that easy, and I'm actually that's why I'm really happy that you and now many other universities worldwide started to really examine the behavior of dogs in a scientific approach, because I think those ones who follow these papers, these results, know that the more we know, the more we understand, we realize that dogs are really complex species. And we just talked about behavior now, and really just the basic terms. And it was absolutely obvious that it is really complex. And we didn't talk about perception of dogs at all, because it is another huge topic. So I think we managed to clear all those generally used words and concepts now from scientific approach. I do thank you for this because in my opinion, there are many problems related to dog behavior. I don't mean the behavior of dogs, but we don't know how to understand the behavior of dogs, how to see how complex topic it is. And that's why I wanted to make this episode, to start from the basic terms, because if we misinterpret them, then we will have a false picture about how these fantastic creatures work in our everyday life. So I do thank you for accepting my invitation, and I really appreciate for this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And actually, I really would like to encourage, if it's possible, to say this at the end, people to really read more and study more ethology. I'm very much surprised that people are talking about these concepts, talking about behavior, which is actually a matter of scientific investigations, without actually not knowing about the science. And I think ethology is not so complicated as a science. It's not biochemistry, not genetics. So if people who have a dog, especially, and also dog breeders or dog trainers who really take the time and visit any ethology courses or just read books on ethology, I think this would really give them a very good background to understand the behavior of the dogs, and also how science is starting to investigate these issues. So thank you very much for this opportunity anyway.
And thank you for accepting my invitations. Thank you. Bye.